Good evening, everyone. Today is Monday, July 19th, 2010. It's our regular council meeting of the third Monday of July here. If you could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And at this time, I'd ask to establish a quorum for Clerk Spencer to call the roll, please.
Gutenhoff.
Here.
Peasant.
Here.
Shea.
Here.
Leader.
Here.
Rose.
Here.
Bram.
Here.
Hipskin.
Here.
York.
Here.
Nybo.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Morley. Absent. Kennedy.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
Wagner. Absent. 12 present, 2 absent.
12 present, 2 absent. We have a quorum. And at this time, I would go to item number 2 on our agenda, which is a public hearing for Special Service Area number 15. And I would like to open up this public hearing at this time. It's regarding Gladys Avenue. And at this time, I would ask if you could raise your hand. I would call on you, and if you could please either go up to the microphone to my left or to my right along the sides of the wall. Please state your name and address, and then you could speak regarding the public forum portion of the special service area regarding Gladys Avenue. At this time, is there anyone that would like to speak for public forum?
Public forum or public hearing?
Anyone?
What? Getting confused.
Mr. Del Rio?
What did he say?
Go ahead.
Is this the public
This is a public hearing,
hearing?
I should say, not public forum.
Okay.
Well, I wanted to thank the council members, the mayor, for the opportunity to speak tonight on behalf of the Gladys Avenue Sidewalk Project. I just wanted to highlight a couple of small points. Fernando Del Rio, 541 West Gladys. My apologies. I just wanted to point out a couple of things that this particular sidewalk that we're looking to have on Gladys Avenue is no different than what you see on Fay Avenue, where there's new construction. You have half blocks going down that particular block. Also, I'd like to point out that on Armitage, you also have a similar situation where you have a half block or maybe even a quarter of that side that has sidewalks. So please keep that in the back of your mind when you're thinking about this particular project. Again, I wanted to thank the council members and the mayor for their support. It's been a long process. I do believe the policy does include a way to have this particular sidewalk implemented on our street. So again, thank you for your time and your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Del Rio. Anyone else for the public hearing for Gladys Avenue? Anyone? Please raise your hand. Last call for public hearing. I would ask for a motion to close the public hearing, please. Alderman York, with a second from Alderman Hibb. Oh, Mr. Revelletti, would you like to speak?
I thought we put our name down there.
Yeah.
That's for open. We're doing 2 things tonight, and I apologize if it's confusing. We're doing the public hearing for Gladys Avenue, and then we're doing the public forum, which will come after item number 5 in our agenda. So if you would like to speak on the, okay.
Yeah.
But if you sign in, you could still speak regarding that as well if you'd like. We have a motion from Alderman York and a second from Alderman Hipskin to close the public forum. Public hearing. Or public hearing, I should say. Keep on getting that incorrect. And at this time, I ask for a motion. All right, we got the motion and second. Ask, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, the public hearing is officially closed. And we'll go on to item number 3, which is a proclamation for American with Disabilities Act Day. And I know there's a gentleman, I believe is it in the audience that is here for this proclamation. If you could raise your hand. Is there a gentleman for the proclamation for disabilities? Alderman Wagner mentioned that there was somebody possibly from Visitation Church. Okay. If not, I have a special guest in the audience that I would like to invite up to the podium. He's actually a former classmate of mine who has a disability. His name is Joe Girardi. Joe, would you meet me up at a podium? Thanks, Joe. Joe, the mayor's getting old, so he's got to wear these specs now. Many people often wondered how I got passionate about people with disabilities. Joe and I went to, gosh, I've known Joe since grade school. We went to church together at Mary Queen of Heaven, and went to York High School together, and he's a great, great individual. Joe suffers from cerebral palsy, and when I met Joe, he was in a wheelchair, and Joe overcame a lot of his disability through therapy, and he was the Easter Seals kid in the 70s. I think you were the poster child for Easter Seals. Cerebral palsy. And just an inspiration to people that have disabilities. Joe was not only an academic, brilliant person at York High School, but he went on to the University of Illinois. Was one of the first persons with disabilities to attend the University of Illinois and actually graduate with a bachelor's degree, I believe, in history. There we go. And currently works for his father's construction company, Jay Condon and Carol Stream, and it's an inspiration to people with disabilities as to how you can overcome them. He also is or was the point guard for Chicago Wheelchair Bulls out of Nesdra. Not anymore, but he's still he lost a step or two, but he's quite a guy and a very dear friend of mine. So the gentleman that was supposed to get this proclamation wasn't here tonight, but when I saw Joe in the audience, I thought it was fitting to invite Joe up. Now I need the specs. Whereas the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, was signed into law on July 26, 1990 to ensure the civil rights of people with disabilities. Whereas the ADA has expanded opportunities for Americans with disabilities by reducing barriers and changing perceptions, increasing full participation in community life. And whereas the full promise of the ADA will only be reached if public entities remain committed in their efforts to fully implement the ADA. And whereas, on the 20th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, the City of Elmhurst celebrates and recognizes the progress that has been made by reaffirming the principles of equality and inclusion and recommitting our efforts to reach full ADA compliance. And whereas, on July 26, 2010, the country will celebrate this anniversary at the Great Lakes ADA Center in conjunction with the National Network of ADA Centers, launched as an initiative titled 2010 in 2010. And now, therefore, I, Peter P. DeCiani III, Mayor of the City of Elmhurst, do hereby proclaim July 26, 2010 as Americans with Disabilities Act Day in the City of Elmhurst, and do hereby reaffirm our commitment to work toward full ADA compliance. Thanks, Joe, for coming up.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay. And who would have known that this mayor would have had a daughter with a disability too? So when things kind of come around full circle. So that's what life's all about, I guess. So on to item number 4, receipt of written communications and petitions from the public. At this time, are there any written communications and/or petitions from the public?
Recognize.
If there are, if you could please step up and present those to Clerk Spencer at this time. Thank you. Receipt of any written communications and/or petitions?
It's not so bad.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody else for written communications and/or petitions? Okay. I will now go on to the public forum portion of our meeting, and we have Clerk Spencer. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the council tonight?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people who have signed in. I will start with the first person, Gilbert R. Fisher, 586 North Van Auken.
I'm Gilbert Fisher, 586 North Van Auken Street in Elmhurst, Illinois. First of all, I'd like to say that you are my government. Every person up there has been elected by the people of Elmhurst. A lot of people will never see any more government officials besides you. And a lot of people in Elmhurst will not see you. They will not have any reason to come here and talk to you. But you people are very important. And there's 3 things you have to do for the citizens of Elmhurst. The first one is our safety. And to do that, you have to have a police force. You have an excellent police force. Top of the line, the best there is. The second is our health. And for that, you have fire engines, firemen, ambulances, and you have the best. You take very good care of that. The third part is something that you have not been addressing. Democracy. Our democracy. Democracy is the United States of America, where every citizen has the right to vote for a president, a senator, a congressman. You have not been paying attention to the citizens of Elmhurst having their vote rights taken away from them. President-elect Obama from Washington, D.C., called his friends in Illinois and said, on my empty seat, I want this person put in or that person put in. I need a person appointed to the Senate seat, my empty Senate seat, that will vote along with me what I want. We had a Governor Quinn come out and say, we cannot have a vote in the state of Illinois for the voters to vote on for Obama's empty Senate seat because we don't have the money. It'll cost too much money to have the voters vote. This is 100% wrong. In July of 1933, Hitler in Germany outlawed every government body except his Nazi realm. I do not want to be going down the street and have people point at me, there's Gil Fisher from the state of Illinois, the first Nazi state in the United States of America. I have had my right to vote taken away from me, and I do not see any backing coming from you, my immediate government.
Mr. Fisher, if you could wrap it up, we got about 10 more seconds for public forum.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I am asking you to contact the papers, to contact the people in power, to give every voter in the state of Illinois the right to vote for their senator. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. Anyone else for public forum at this time? Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Clerk Spencer? My mistake.
Next, we have Claude Pagash, 566 West Gladys.
Good evening, all. I haven't been around for a couple of weeks and been kind of dependent on the newspapers to tell me what's going on in this council. Well, we did have a little problem with a committee. I did find out that we got our legal department trying to work out some kind of statement that'll cover a disturbance. I can only ask the councilman that after we have this and the committee members have it, which committee member determines what's a disturbance? Right back to where we started, but we're going to spend a lot of money trying to write something that we can't even write. Also, I understand we got a little problem with our gasoline city tax. It's coming up for discussion. Well, I can only ask the aldermen and the city administration to hop in their cars and drive around the local gas stations in town and then drive outside the city of Elmhurst. And generally they'll find, without doubt, that the gas in Elmhurst is more expensive than anywhere else in the local suburbs. So adding another, whatever you're going to add, 2 cents, penny and a half, 3. As one alderman would say in the local paper, I hate to start nickel and diming the citizens of Elmhurst to death. Well, I guess you're going to go nickel and dime us to death. Also, we find that number one, we got a little problem with money again. Money on the gas tax is not going to cure it. We're hoping for money from Metro. We're hoping for money from the state. We're hoping for money from a lot of places. We've already taken money from the locals. But I can only ask the alderman and his administration to consider one thing. On all these issues, I don't know if your cures are cures, or all they're going to do is create more havoc than we already have. So when these issues come up, really consider them. some of you are chairmen of boards, and most of you sit on boards. And in your own mind, a disturbance, whether technically written up by our legal department, has any validity, will be determined by who? Him? First alderman opens his mouth. What if the other aldermen don't see it? And as far as this gas tax, well, you'll get a few more bucks, but I'll tell you one thing. The businessmen aren't going to get any more business. Have a good evening, all.
Thank you, Claude.
Next, we have John Robiletti, 625 West Gladys.
Good evening. The only thing I want to know about is when are they ever going to take a vote on sidewalks the old way, where both sides of the street have to vote, not this half a street. When they put in streets, both sides of the street had to vote on it, and that should be the way for sidewalks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Derek Allen, 55 West Gladys, 557 West Gladys. Mr. Allen, do you care to speak? Okay, thank you. Fernando Del Rio, 541 West Gladys.
Fernando Del Rio, 541 West Gladys. Again, thank you for your time and patience. One thing I want to state is that we need to keep separate the Gladys Avenue project from any future changes that we may contemplate making for the policy for sidewalks. We have this SSA that we're proceeding with, and I'd like to see that this be separated from any changes that may be contemplated on the floor here. The current policy does state that we can have sidewalks on one side, and furthermore, there is language in there that says if there's an unusual subdivision or section, that can also be approved, but it's subject to your approval. And I do want to point out that on June 21st, I think, when the vote was taken, you had a 12-2 vote, where basically you decided that this subsection or half block, whatever the terminology that you wish to use, is acceptable for the street of Gladys and for the city of Elmhurst. A lot of our children, a lot of our residents, a lot of our guests are counting on you. We're putting our trust in you, and I believe that you'll do the right thing by following your compromise that you proposed. So again, I do want to thank you all for all the hard work and the time that you've put into this, and I basically ask you for the safety of our kids. That's the reason why I put this together in the first place, probably more than 2 years ago. I really have a vested interest, and I hope that you follow through with this compromise, as we think that it will be a very good project for the Gladys Avenue street, and I think it's a good compromise for both sides. So as a concerned father, I ask for your continued support for the sidewalks on Gladys Avenue, and again, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Tamara Bremner, 137 North Caroline.
It's Tamara Brenner, 137 North Caroline. During the mayor's announcement section of the city council meeting on July 6th, 2 weeks ago, Mr. DeCiani said, once again in reference to the outstanding $2.5 million Metra grant, quote, during our budget cycle, we line itemed $30,000 in case we needed to hire a lobbyist. That was voted on unanimously and passed in our budget, end quote. This is not the first time we've heard the mayor mention a budget line item for a lobbyist, and I'm still trying to figure out exactly where this line item is. Now, based on the discussion at a council of the whole meeting on March the 8th of this year, the details of which are too involved to go into here, I think the mayor is referring to the line called professional services under the heading contractual services in the administration section of the budget. Is that the line item you're referring to, Mr. Mayor? The explanation listed in the budget documentation for the increase of $25,000 is, quote, for the opportunity to retain professional services as necessary for future and to-be-determined city initiatives. That's pretty open-ended, and it doesn't say anything specific about a lobbyist. Over the past couple of months, I've asked several aldermen about the supposed line item for a lobbyist, and I've been told there is no such line item that they are aware of. From what I can tell, the City Council did not intend to designate funds for a contract lobbyist in the budget it voted for, and I think the continued references to a line item in the budget for this purpose are disingenuous. I understand that the $2.5 million slated to come from the Metro grant represents a sizable percentage of the city's $52 million budget for the year. What I don't understand is the connection between hiring a contract lobbyist and being able to procure that money. Numerous local entities, not just the city of Elmhurst, are waiting for funds to be delivered by the state of Illinois, and having a contract lobbyist on the payroll cannot change the fact that the state of Illinois does not have the funds to distribute. It makes no sense to throw good money out the window, hoping a lobbyist is magically going to be able to squeeze non-existent money out of the state. I hope the council will act accordingly when the issue eventually comes to a vote.
Thank you, Ms. Brenner.
Darlene Heslop, 225 North Michigan, number 227.
It's actually 200 North that's okay. 200 North Michigan Avenue, number
Tried to
227, Elmhurst.
Thank you.
It's okay. Don't
record
mention
will
it.
be
It's a learning process here.
Duly noted.
We understand it. Last Monday, I had the opportunity to discuss with State Senate Minority Leader Christine Radogno several things, and one of them was a comment made by Mayor DeCiani on the 28th in a Finance Committee meeting, in which he stated that he had spoken to Christine Radogno and Tom Cross, who both think that this is a great idea, and that was in regards to a lobbyist. Senator Radogno stated that she had run into Mayor DeCiani at an event, and he ran two names past her, including John Kelly of All Circo, and she said that they were good as far as lobbyists were concerned, but she stated to me that she did not say to hire anyone. As a matter of fact, she even stated to me that she did not believe that municipalities need to spend money to hire lobbyists. She also told me that the Western access issue, it's not an issue for lobbyists, even close to it, but it's actually for lawmakers because it is a major, huge project involving both federal and state agencies, and we're nowhere near. It's just really a big project, and there's a lot going on with it, and we don't need a lobbyist right now at it. But anyway, to kind of further along this whole thing, because I had been looking back at old tapes of old council meetings, and there were several discussions in which State Senator Carol Pankow's name came up with the mayor over the past year regarding this particular Metro grant. So I decided to call her and ask her if maybe there was a way that she could help with the negotiations for our getting this money from Springfield. And she told me that it would be at least 3 to 4 years before we saw this $2.5 million, because this was due to this particular money being part of a $31 billion capital bill that was passed last year, in which there were multiple parts, including funds for the RTA, of which Metro is part. The $2.5 million is actually a line item in the bill, and the problem is, due to the severe financial crisis that the state of Illinois finds itself in, with a bond rating just north of junk bond status, we as a state cannot find anyone to finance our day-to-day debt obligations, let alone something in the future. So she basically stated that because it's a capital bill, it's off to the side, and we're still waiting to figure out a way to finance it. She also stated that regarding a lobbyist at the present time, since no one was going to be in Springfield until January, there was really no one to lobby to. And she also reiterated what Senator Radogno stated regarding the Western access issue. I do have some questions.
Heslop, 10 more seconds because you're over the 3 minutes, but if you could wrap it up, that'd be great. Thank you.
I want to know why I could make 2 telephone calls and find out all this information, and no one else seems to have been able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, at this time, I don't have any more people that indicated that they wish to speak tonight. This is a new procedure. If you didn't get to sign in, well, I guess we can allow you to come up to the microphone. We're trying to make sure everyone has an opportunity to speak. So that concludes public forum.
Thank you, Clerk Spencer. I will go on to item number 6 in the agenda, which is the consent agenda. I would ask if there's anyone that has any questions regarding any of the items on the consent agenda, or has any questions, or possibly might want to vote no, to indicate to me now. Any items that would like to be pulled? Anything? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion and a second to approve the contents of the consent agenda in its entirety. Alderman Gutenkopf, second by Alderman York. And roll call, please, from Clerk Spencer.
Gutenkopf. Aye. York.
Aye.
Pezza.
Aye.
Shea. Aye. Leader.
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
Bram.
Aye.
Hipskin.
Aye.
Nybo.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Morley, absent. Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner, absent. 12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent.
12 ayes, 0 nays, 2 absent. The motion, or the consent agenda is approved in its entirety. I will now go on to item number 7, which is committee reports. Item A, it's a report on motor fuel. I ask Clerk Spencer to read the recommendation, please.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Finance, Council Affairs, and Administrative Services Committee that the City Council approve a municipal motor fuel tax of 1 1/2 cents per gallon on all grades and types of petroleum, and direct the city attorney to prepare the ordinance for implementation the first of the month following the approval of the ordinance. Respectfully submitted, Finance, Council and Affairs and Administrative Services Committee, signed by Stephen W. Hipskin, Chairman, Kevin L. York, Vice Chairman, Mark A. Mulliner, and unsigned by Diane Gutenkopf.
And at this time, I'd ask for a motion and a second to put this report on the floor, please. Alderman Hipskin with a second from Alderman York. And before we go into discussion and debate, I would like to have City Manager Borchert, who put a special memo in our packet, to give a little bit of light on this particular report, please. Thank you, City Manager Borchert.
I'd be glad to respond to that, Mr. Mayor. I certainly don't want to review in detail the memorandum, but the City Council received and available for anybody in the community, the press should have received or has available the memo from last week regarding the motor fuel tax and the general fund status. If I may, I will just touch on the bullets of that memorandum. The current status of the general fund is, as a result of significant underspending from last year's fiscal year, we had significant under-revenue collections from last fiscal year, but because of the cuts in spending, we did end in an unaudited yet fashion the general fund with a fund balance from last fiscal year that does provide a fund balance currently of a little under $5 million in the general fund. That's much more than was anticipated, but it's woefully under the council's policy of 3 to 4 months of the general fund balance, which would be 9 to 12 million. The council prescribed range for the working cash fund is 800,000 to $1 million. There's only 30,000 in that fund. So we're way under where we've been identified as our target for fund balance. Now, to the current status of the fiscal year 10-11, we did approve a budget that included an anticipated motor fuel tax revenue coming off of the recommendation of the task force, and that revenue, even if implemented now, will be less than what was provided for in the budget estimate. The budget did provide for a contingency. That contingency, though, is $50,000. The general fund is now financing the expenses of the 2 June storms, which are just in contract expenses for vendors, anticipated to be significantly over $100,000. There's a lot of overtime expenses that will also be charged to the different department expense reports that will probably overexpend personnel for the fiscal year. So we're spending more than was provided for, meaning we're putting more stress on the general fund. Relative to sales tax, the projection for sales tax was that it would begin to rebound. There were a number of economic indicators, economic forecasters identifying that the recession, Great Recession, had ended, and we're beginning to slowly come out of that. We anticipated a 2% bump over the very dismal collections of last year. Our most recent 3 months of sales tax, however, don't reflect a bump. They reflect a decrease of 8% on what otherwise would be a bump. If that continues, the sales tax is going to be performing at $643,000 under what was projected for in the budget. In capital improvement dollars, to take the stress off the general fund, the city has, staff recommended last year, council approved last year's budget, $871,000 of what in the past was paid for out of the general fund is now being paid for out of capital improvement fund revenues. From a staff perspective, that is just not sustainable for the long term. It's a practice that will adversely affect the city's infrastructure. Staff actually recommended we do that for a year to get through this rock and hard place status, but would caution again from a staff perspective, it's a non-sustainable practice, not a good practice going forward, and we should keep focus on that as we look forward. Then the motor fuel tax itself, we're so deep into this fiscal year that the anticipated $240,000, if implemented quickly and then put in effect September 1st, will be $80,000 less than what was anticipated in the budget. So that's just all going in the wrong direction. Other factors that I think are certainly appropriate for the discussion of the council relative to the policies that are in play, which goes to really some strategic thinking, strategic planning, short-term and long-term on the budget and on revenues and on expenditures. Sales tax continues to be the good news and bad news. It carried the city of Elmhurst for many, many, many years in a very strong, positive fashion. The Moody's, the Standard & Poor's cautioned Elmhurst, don't rely so strongly on sales tax going forward, to be more diverse if at all possible. By implementing other revenue sources, by leaning on other revenue sources, the city of Elmhurst would be responding to those advisors in a positive way. That's what would happen if there was an implementation of a motor fuel tax locally. Review of the citizen survey. I think a particular opportunity this year is the every other year of the citizen survey. We look at the budget as a policy document. It starts with the community. What does the community expect? What is the community asking for? And then as policymakers, mayor, council, with help from staff, sort out what Elmhurst is to provide, what Elmhurst is to be going forward. You look at the questions embedded in this year's citizen survey relative to service, what's about right, what's too much, what's not enough. It's very clear that the larger numbers of the community are saying that all of the services of the community are about right, and if anything, not enough, as opposed to too much. And I think this goes to kind of support what the council has said in the past, the task force has said in the past, the majority of the community has said in the past, is the community is a quality community, and we need to do what we can to maintain that, to keep it that way. And that starts with the pillars of what supports police and fire and infrastructure and the community. You look at the street and forestry, those items that are general fund financed, strong request to be doing at least what's been done in the past, if not in many cases more. Lastly, the memo says motor fuel tax, if implemented, there's a lot of folks that are outside the community that would be buying gas within the community. It leverages then Elmhurst. It's not all paid for by the Elmhurst community. And lastly, relative to, again, a verification of what's been understood in the past, the Elmhurst community prefers user fees as the highest source of revenues compared to other traditional revenue sources available to cities. The city sends out 1,600 of these surveys, cross-section of the community, statistically valid cross-section, and we've gotten over 600 back. We're still compiling them in a tabular form for the full council's evaluation for the full budget, but wanted to give you these answers as I think it is particularly pertinent for the motor fuel tax discussion. Over half say user fees are better than our preferred method of financing for services. If we use it, we'll pay for it. Sales tax was next highest, 25%. Other sources were 13%, and then the property tax, I think, was dead last at under 10%. Last item to just comment on, strategic again. The council's been seriously focused on this and working hard on it. This is heavy work and it's heavy lifting. Spent a lot of time on the budget, spent a lot of time on that document, and if you look at the second year out of that budget, that second year out of the budget projected a $400,000 deficit. You only approved the first year, that projected a slight contribution, but the second year had a deficit of $400,000. If you do the math and do the correction as a result of the sales tax correction, if that sales tax correction goes out for the second year, and if motor fuel tax is not implemented this year or next year, that $400,000 deficit becomes not $400,000, but $1,650,000.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman, I directed the city manager to read this memo, so you're out of order.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I believe I can make a point of order request at any point in our conversation.
Okay.
And I have a point of order request. And
What's your request, miss?
I'd like to, it appears to me that however well-meaning we are at having this memorandum read, that it's starting to lean a bit toward arguing one perspective over another in regards to the issue in front of the council, and it strikes me that our code and Robert's rules clearly indicate that that is the council's duty to discuss. And while I certainly appreciate all the hard work that went into the city manager's memo, I do believe that every member of the council has had this memo since Thursday, and we have had the opportunity to read it, and that perhaps we should ask the city attorney for a statement of appropriateness at this point, that as we begin to present arguments either pro or con for this particular topic, it should be the council making those kinds of comments, and that I believe the city manager's role, and he does it very well, is to provide us with data that will help us in our analysis.
Thank you, Alderman. I believe the city manager was engaging in discussion and was actually per the request of the mayor, who's chairing the meeting, but I will refer to our city attorney. Is discussion appropriate, city attorney?
Well, you know, the mayor, under your rules, can call on the manager. I don't know if there's much more to be said. I guess we could ask if somebody wants to overrule the chair on the point of order, or you just want to let the manager finish. I just asked him. He has very little to finish. It's the will of the council.
City Manager Borchard, you almost done wrapping it up, would you say?
Yeah, I wanted to get to that second year out.
I believe Alderman Nybo has his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know, I've never played hide the ball up here. I mean, I would think that anybody who's an advocate of transparency in government would want more information out there, and it's actually very helpful to me to have all the information documentation, financial information that we need to make a very important decision tonight. So for the sake of transparency, I would ask the city manager to please continue and wrap up his thoughts.
Thank you.
I did want to go through the memorandum and get into the second year out. I didn't put the second year out in the memorandum. We've covered that, and it illustrates, frankly, that, again, the pressure that you've understood you're under, and wanted you to be fully aware of that and remain here to help with your debate on the policy matter. And I conclude my report. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Borchard. We'll go now enter into debate. Get a motion by Alderman Hipskin and... Ma'am, I'm sorry. We do not take public comment at this time. There's no public input in this meeting. I apologize, but there's no discussion at this time from the audience. Thank you. I would go to Chairman Hipskin for discussion on the particular report.
Well, I think that there's a number of comments out there, so anybody that would like to make a comment at this point on the motor fuel tax, please raise your hand.
Alderman York.
Thank you, Your Honor. First of all, it would come as no surprise that implementing a new tax, or as the city manager's referred in his memo, this more closely resembles a user fee, is not a pleasurable task. It's not something that certainly I contemplate lightly, or I suspect many of us up here are in the same situation where we take this very seriously. Revenue shortfalls are something that I anticipated when I made my decision on whether or not to serve publicly for the city. So I'd like to share my thought process with you all and ask for your support of this report. I have some semi-prepared remarks, and I'm not going to go in quite as detail because some of them have been explained very well by the city manager. First of all, I'd like to reflect back to the Finance Task Force report, and I have a copy of it here. These folks started meeting well over a year ago. 24 very intelligent, not connected as we are to the city folks who took their own time to be here on a weekly basis to review, with the help of the city staff, the finances of the city. Out of this report came recommended revenue increases of about $4.5 million, including a 2-cent motor fuel tax, which in itself would generate about $400,000, or just a little less than 10% of that revenue increase that they suggested. The City Council voted 9-5 for the property tax increase at an amount slightly less than what was recommended by the task force. The task force also recommended about $2.26 million in expense reductions. Collectively, I believe we worked very hard and are continuing to work on bringing these savings to fruition. Many of them we have control of, many more of them we don't, due to the fact that we have pension burdens and labor contracts and things that are not as easily controlled as we would like to have them. On to the discussion of the motor fuel tax. It took a few meetings, and these meetings were attended by representatives of the gas stations here in town, and I'd like to thank them, as our committee did, for coming out and making their voices heard on the matter. They took their own time to come out here and speak and be heard. As we expected, there was concern around what was initially believed to be a 2 to 4 to 6 cent motor fuel tax that was kind of in the air there at the time, and the likely effects that would have on local businesses. Through the discourse that ensued, there seemed to be some agreement amongst these gas station owners that a motor fuel tax in the range of 2 cents or a little bit less, while not desirable, was certainly a palatable idea by these local businessmen. business people, because there were ladies there also. This amount is less than the Cook County tax and would keep Elmhurst viable in the Cook County marketplace, which we serve. People come here from Cook County to buy gas. You keep us competitive. Our committee settled along with a city recommendation on the 1.5 cent motor fuel tax amount. To put that in perspective for everybody, we all fill our cars up with gas. A 15-gallon fill-up on average would result in an increase, if the business owner passed the entire tax along to the consumer, of about 22.5 cents per tank of gas that people fill up. A quarter a couple times a week is 50 cents. 50 cents in a week in a month is $2. $2 is $2. I am not discounting the fact that that's real money, and that $2 makes the difference for some people in their daily lives. So I do not want to discount that at all. On to the budget. As City Manager Borchert has alluded to, the budget was painstakingly debated and reviewed for months. When all was said and done, the budget passed unanimously by all those attending the meeting. That budget includes the revenues attributable to the motor fuel tax at 1.5 cents per gallon. That revenue, along with all the other revenue in the budget, pays for services, for the services that we all not only enjoy but need, public safety and such, and to a lesser extent provides the opportunity to build fund balances should the budget play out as planned and provide an excess of sources over uses. If you voted for the budget, in my opinion, you voted for the motor fuel tax revenue. Let's finish the job tonight. Today, to my colleagues, I hope that you've had the chance to read and absorb the memo that's just been gone over by City Manager Borchert. It's a great, albeit dismal in reality in some senses, summary of where we are and why we must take steps to enhance revenue for the city, enhance all revenues for the city. Motor fuel tax, as noted, will not by itself cure our ills, but is a critical first step, and we ask for your support. As noted, citizens do not want less services. In order to provide the current array of services that we currently receive and provide more services, we're going to have to get more efficient in providing these services. And in the short time that I've been here, we have, through using the internet for vehicle parking stickers and the electronic pay stations. These are all positive steps that we've taken to reduce costs in the city of Elmhurst. So we still will need to increase revenues and actually to maintain and expand services. We are just, as noted, a month removed from 2 storms that have cost the city and the residents hundreds of thousands of dollars collectively. We're going to have to work together over the next series of years to create, enhance, and protect our very vital revenue streams and sources. It's going to be a marathon. It's not going to be something that we're going to fix in a year or 2 years. So let's get started tonight. Let's vote yes for the motor fuel tax report. If we don't do this, we're likely to be taking some rather more consequential votes on paring back services that may be extremely critical to the residents of the city of Elmhurst. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Any other discussion? Alderman Shea.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I wanted to look at it at a different way. First, I gave a report before the Finance Committee started discussing it, and it was comparing the prices now of the Elmhurst gas stations with the gas stations around it and comparing them if you add the 1.5 cent tax onto it. When the 1.5 cent tax was being added to it, it dropped us to the bottom of the list where the highest prices would be compared to the other gas stations. Also, for the memorandum from Mr. Borchert about the general fund status, the 4th bullet point down talks about the sales tax. It states the sales tax receipts reflect a decrease instead of our anticipated increase. To me, that shows me that raising taxes does not guarantee an increase in revenue. People will shop where prices are lowest. I've driven 1 to 2 blocks myself to pay less for gas, And then while I'm there, I also pick up coffee, you know, staples, whatever. And in this economy, I feel lower prices will attract more customers. Consumers from other towns will not buy gas in Elmhurst if we're higher than than the gas prices in their town. We could lose gas revenue as well as sales tax revenue. Also, it says in the report that station owners could absorb the cost, and I don't feel that's proper. I don't think they should have to absorb some or all of the tax increase to be competitive. I don't believe that, you know, I don't feel that the motor fuel tax, I feel it will hurt not only our gas revenue, but also our sales tax revenue. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to also highlight some of the points that Alderman Shea has just made, and I have various examples here, so bear with me with all the paperwork in front of me. First off, I'm glad to see that this report has made it to the dais again. It was brought to us back in February. I thought it was an important fact to debate this back then, and I'm glad, and actually I was going to bring this up last meeting, I'm glad to see it before us today, because no matter what the decision is, I think that we need to take action one way or another, so not only us as a council knows what direction we're going, what possible additional revenue we may receive from this, but also the city staff also needs to know that direction as soon as all possible. With that stated, and it wasn't included in this week's report, so I'm referencing the old report from February 23rd. And this goes in regards to what was added on, attached to that report of the gas stations in the area. In Elmhurst, included, which I'm not sure why, but some in Cook County, Franklin Park, Bensonville, etc. The third ward, where I represent, has 3 gas stations on the corner of York and Grand. There used to be 4, actually. Another additional gas station about a half a block down from York and Grand. Out of those, and this was given to us by the city staff, January 6, 2010 per gallon prices, the York and Grand Bensonville side of York and Grand, $2.79. 1000 North York, the Elmhurst side of York and Grand, $2.79. If this passes tonight, it's no doubt, well, I shouldn't make that assumption. There's that potential that if the gas station owner pushes this to the consumers, that it'll be $0.015 more. Power Mart on Lake Street, $2.84, and that's only a few blocks away from this intersection. 926 North York, a Shell gas station that was recently added, $2.85. According to this, is already above the Bensonville location, which is only a half a block away. 1003 North York, which is on the other corner, $2.85 before any possible increase in MFT. I think that we need to make sure that we consider this very importantly, because if we increase this, especially the outlier gas stations, if they actually reflect that in the per gallon gas price, people will travel to other locations. I have an article, or I shouldn't say an article, a street view from the Chicago Tribune on July 4th of this year. Would you travel to another county for a lower sales tax or cheaper gas? And I'm not going to repeat all of the quotes here. I do for gas or groceries. I'm from the Upper Peninsula, so I'm used to paying much lower prices. I will drive, another quote, I will drive farther for gas if the prices are less. There's 4 people who made some statements here, and I know this is not scientific poll, but out of those 4, 3 were definitive that they would travel elsewhere, one of which was lukewarm, to be honest, to the unofficial poll here. I think that some statements were made in regards to public safety. These funds, the MFT cannot fund public safety. The MFT, if I may quote the budget itself, the MFT fund is used to account for street maintenance and improvement projects financed by the city's share of state gasoline taxes. And it goes on to talk about IDOT projects as well. So I don't think that the argument of, you know, if we don't do this, we're going to have to cut fire or police, and not that anybody went there, but I don't think that public safety aspect of the city is in jeopardy because of the MFT. My final point is the last finance report that I received from the city staff, and actually the MFT is not looking too bad relative to 2009. The report actually states end of April 30th, 2010, the 2009 year was 1,140,000, and we're a little bit below 4.8%. The end of 2010 April, $1,085,000. So I'm having a hard time digesting why we'd want to increase 1.5 cents per gallon as proposed by the Finance Committee. And the last thing I would like to actually request, if the Finance Committee may respond, if they so choose, is what is the difference, what did we find out from today's report compared to 3-4 months ago in February when it was first issued? Because in the actual report itself, I didn't see anything different that we learned now compared to then. Because I think that there's missed revenue the longer we wait. So again, I want to reinforce that no matter what happens today, I'm glad that we're resolving this once and for all for this fiscal year. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman. Anybody else for discussion? Alderman Gutenkopf?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that raising the motor fuel tax has broader implications, none of which have been touched on at this point, and that's that people who buy gasoline often come to a gas station because they're also buying other things. For the gas stations that border Cook County, they draw a lot of Cook County residents who want to buy cigarettes. Cigarettes are heavily taxed. We see sales tax revenue from those cigarette sales. Other people come to gas stations and buy a gallon of milk, or pop in and buy a newspaper, or pop in and buy a variety of other things from which we receive sales tax revenue. So I think when we start to talk about potential sales tax revenue loss, it's important for us to look at the whole picture of what people shop for and what they buy. I am of the opinion that if we drive sales of gasoline away from Elmhurst, we're driving sales of ancillary purchases away as well. And if I may quote the report, the motor fuel tax has been identified as a potential minor revenue source to the general fund. I'd hate for us to implement a minor revenue source and lose a major one. And that's my fear. And that's what I think increasing gasoline taxes in Elmhurst is going to do. It's going to drive away those people who come to the gas station, not just because they buy gas, but as was ably stated by one of the gas station owners who came to our committee meetings, people buy gas where they shop. He didn't say people buy cigarettes where they buy gas. He said people buy gas where they buy cigarettes. And if we're going to drive away some of these other sales, if we're not going to entice people to come into Elmhurst to pick up all these things, they'll buy gas in Villa Park, where the cigarette tax is the same, because they're looking at how they're spending all of their funding. And, you know, I talk to people who live on the areas of town that border communities with cheaper gas stations, Villa Park, Addison, Bensonville, even gas is cheaper in Oak Brook. They buy gas there. They buy gas on their way to work. They don't buy gas in Elmhurst. They buy gas where it's convenient and cheap for them to buy gas. And I think the harder we make it on the gas stations in Elmhurst, the harder we're making it for these business people, and the less likely we are to see a total raise in the amount of revenue we get. It's a self-defeating tax, and I can't support it.
Thank you, Alderman. Any other discussion? Anybody? Alderman Mulliner, please.
Yeah, this is, you know, we've heard a lot of discussion about this. This is a very difficult issue. This is one that I've spent a lot of time thinking about. I've both the pros and cons on it. Quite honestly, as I've gotten here tonight, I've still been kind of tossing it up and down on which way to go with this. The big thing that we probably missed the boat on as far as the city council is that when we passed the levy, we were a little bit too low. And that's where probably our biggest mistake was to make sure that we focus on that and we focus our attention in the right places. the challenge that we have in front of us is that we need to make up some revenue that we did have in the budget and we still have in the budget. That's where this motor fuel tax is really, or this tax has come in, is that we have to make up that revenue that we have in the budget. We can call it a fee, we can call it whatever you want. It's a tax. Everything's a tax. It's the user fee is a tax. No matter how we want to slice it, it becomes a tax. My challenge is that, I understand all of the concerns about whether or not we should or shouldn't do this. I understand that we're going to drive people away to some degree. I'll be perfectly honest, I don't buy my gas in Elmhurst. It's too expensive. I mean, I just don't. I just never have, and I probably still won't. I mean, and I'm just being honest. That doesn't mean that people won't continue to buy gas in Elmhurst, but I am aware of that fact. I'm aware of the fact that it's people do play the game. I mean, it sounds silly that you're driving, a couple of miles to go and spend a penny or 2 pennies less, but the reality is that a lot of people do. Not everybody's rich. Most of the people in this town are like I am, and we're trying to make a living and just make it by. At the same time, this is why I'm really struggling with this one. I know I need to support it because we need it in the budget, but at the same time, I understand the issues that are in front of us. And I'm not sure where I'm going to fall on this when it comes down to it. I really don't know. It's going to come down to the last minute. I want to hear. That's why I really wanted to get this up to the table. I too feel that this is probably 9 months too late. I think we should have had it out here a long time ago, so we could have really debated this a while ago, because we've lost a lot of revenue as it stands. If it passes, if it doesn't pass, the most important thing in my mind right now is to make sure that we let the city, the management staff, know whether this thing's going to pass or not, so that they know what we're dealing with as far as the finances. I mean, our budget clearly said that we were going to have this in here. But at the same time, if we're not going to pass it, they need to know so that they can prepare for how they're going to deal with that revenue that's not there. So, like I said, I want to hear the rest of the discussion, and it's going to come down to the last minute for me, to be perfectly honest.
Thank you, Alderman. Maybe you didn't get my memo on the Shop Elmhurst program, but that's something the mayor's pushing. Alderman Nybo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you, again, indulge me, I rarely try to take up too much time here at the dais, but tonight I just want to explain my thoughts and my thinking on this tonight. I'm also going to disagree with Alderman Mulliner and Alderman York a little bit, but come out in the end where I know at least one of them is, and hopefully come out where I hope the other one will be. I am of the mindset that this is actually not too late to consider this, because I'm of a thinking that I'm a recent convert to this proposal. If you'd asked me back in January or February what I thought about this idea, I thought it was a bad one. And let's take a step back. I think it's important for everybody listening out there to realize that not all governments are run the same. The city of Elmhurst is not Cook County, it's not DuPage County, and it's certainly not the state of Illinois. In fact, I venture to say that if the 14 of us, 15 of us, 16 of us, 17 of us were running the state of Illinois, that we'd be in a lot better shape as a state than we are right now. And I think that's because we do things differently here in the city of Elmhurst. People ask me frequently, what separates good government from bad government? And I think it's three facets of a well-run government. First of all, it's a commitment to principle. And I think all of us are committed to, none of us is pro-tax. We're all, strong fiscal conservatives in favor of balancing the budget, managing the revenue responsibly, and that's an important phrase, managing revenue responsibly. But the second part of good government is the ability to listen, to understand, and to be open-minded. I think you have to, when you're facing the financial circumstances that we're facing, consider all the options that are out there and put your preconceived notions as to how you think you might be in a certain situation aside and really consider the facts. But the most important thing that makes us a well-run government, and I think every one of us would agree that Elmhurst is a very well-run government. The most important factor that distinguishes well-run governments from bad governments is the ability to make hard decisions. And I think that's what we're making tonight. I'm going to make a very hard decision tonight for me up here on this dais. I'm going to support this. And here's why I'm going to support this. I've never supported property tax increases. And the reason is because a property tax, from my perspective, is something that we as residents in the city have very little choice about. We're living in this city, we want to live in this city, and we have to pay property taxes whether they go up or down. On the other hand, there are some revenue sources that are voluntary, in fact, purely voluntary. Buying gas, I can't think of any revenue source more voluntary than buying gas. I'm of a different personality than Alderman Mulliner. I actually always buy my gas in Elmhurst, and I always buy my gas in Elmhurst because it's the most convenient place for me to buy gas. And I think when you talk about gas purchases, that it's convenience more than anything that drives gas purchases. Certainly for the people that live here in this community, but more importantly, for a lot of people who don't live in this community and don't pay our property taxes, they will still buy their gas in Elmhurst because it will still be convenient for them to do so. And if you're a person who really can't afford that and a penny and a half makes a difference, and I understand that could be significant, you know what? You don't have to buy your gas here. You can go to another town. And so from my background of someone who's very averse to additional taxes and increasing taxes and increasing the cost of government, if we have to do it, then this is the way that I would want to do it, is through a gas tax. Now, why has my mind changed on this? Well, because there's two very significant, as far as I'm concerned, facts that have developed since January. First of all, I think we had a balanced budget when we passed it, and I'll disagree with Alderman York. It was a narrowly balanced budget. But what's happened since then? Well, first of all, you heard the facts, and that's why I appreciate City Manager Borchert talking with us. The sales tax projections that we had are below by at least 9%. It's a 9 percentage point variance. We expected a 1% gain from last fiscal year, and what we're experiencing right now is an 8% decline. So you've got a very significant variance on the sales tax side, already in the fiscal year. But the second thing is, and I hope that somebody else comments on this point. We've just faced severely devastating storms and we've incurred a very significant cost to our budget. Now, I think some of you are going to remember that we talked about the contingency fund. And what we did is we said, well, we usually do a contingency fund of $100,000, but I think we can do it at $50,000 this year. And if I've misspoke, City Manager, please let me know, but I think we consciously reduced our contingency fund in an effort to really balance that budget and cut the costs wherever we could. Well, turns out we actually needed that contingency money. Now the cost to do the repairs just from the last two storms are going to be over $100,000. So that's not considering any other contingency that might be out there, and we're only in the third or fourth fiscal month of the fiscal year. So I think our need for contingency funds is going to be quite significant. So I think our financial circumstances are very different than they were 6 months ago. None of us wants to do this, but given what's happening, I think it's very important. We've got some very significant financial expenditures that we're facing, and the point about reallocating our revenue sources is a very good point that needs to be mentioned as well. I will not support a property tax increase while I sit up here in this seat, and I would encourage us to do all that we can to avoid any additional property tax increases. So don't count on my vote if we intend on raising the levy in November. I challenge you to do what we're doing right now. We're reallocating the way we raise revenue in this city, and we're going to have to roll up our sleeves again, and we're going to have to make some very difficult spending reductions and some very tough cuts in next fiscal year. And so this is a tough decision for me, but I don't think this is going to even compare to the tough decisions that we're going to need to continue to make through this fiscal year and the next one.
Thanks, Alderman. Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to start my comments with a couple points regarding the budget and discussion at the budget, and then I'll get to where I stand on the issue. Going through the budget process this year was the first time I'd done it, but I distinctly remember on a couple of occasions hearing, it's in the budget, but we're going to vote on it later. So just because it's in the budget doesn't mean we have to spend it. Now I'm hearing, well, it's in the budget, you voted for it, so kind of by inference you have to vote for it now. So that troubles me, and to be quite honest, that is not factoring into my decision at all. At the time of the budget, a few of us aldermen mentioned specifically the shakiness of the revenue projections, whether it was this motor fuel tax or the rubbish tax, which has now passed, but at the time they were both in the budget, neither had passed. We also mentioned sales tax revenues, which I recall being flat. Now, I guess we projected a 2% increase. I remember thinking, I don't anticipate the sales tax revenues being flat. I personally thought that was very optimistic. So to see that or hear that we're 8% below that is not all that surprising. Yet I still voted for the budget because I felt good. I felt confident enough that this body would react as it needed to through the course of the budget year. Which brings me to where I stand on the motor fuel tax. What is the reality of the situation? I tend to agree with most of Alderman Nybo's points. I think it's a convenience thing, but I certainly don't disagree or disregard Alderman Gutenkopf's or Alderman Shea's comments or Alderman Bram's comments about people leaving Elmhurst. I don't think any of us really knows what's going to happen here. I think we're all hoping that we generate $225 to $250,000. I certainly hope that's the case, but I don't know enough to make that decision or to make that best guess. But to me, it's all about revenue streams and expenses. We're in a hole, and that hole is going to get bigger, I think. So what are we willing to do now to address it? Part of the solution is the motor fuel tax. So I'm going to support the motor fuel tax because I believe we do need the revenue stream. And I hope that it comes in at projection and it doesn't hurt the owners of Elmhurst or the citizens of Elmhurst. But as Alderman Nybo said, I think it is. I think we will get some portion. I didn't want to say a fair share, but I think we'll get some portion of out-of-town money, if you will, with this increase. But just as important to me, and I think we have to address it now so that we're not addressing it in November, December, January with the levy, are the expenses. Because the one thing I don't want to hear then is we're in a $1.4 million hole when we had warning signs now. And clearly we have those signs now. So while I am in favor of the motor fuel tax, I'm also going to ask that the Finance Committee look at additional cuts to the budget. And I'm going to ask that we discuss, or that they discuss and bring a proposal back to the council on offensive spending. It was done a couple of years ago before I got on the council. From what I can tell and from what I've read and from the people I've talked to, it worked pretty well for us then. I think it's time we look at that again to control's a bad word, but to look at the expense side of the equation. We can't just look at the revenue side of the equation to get out of this. As I had a discussion with another alderman today, as a matter of fact, both of us kind of agreed that we're in troubled waters right now. Nobody hopes these troubled waters continue, but what are we willing to do now during these times of troubled waters? Yes, we will raise we'll see, depending on how the vote goes tonight, we'll raise motor fuel tax. We've already raised property tax. We've already raised the rubbish tax. But what are we willing to do on the expense side to help manage this hole we're in during these troubled waters? So I don't want to say with the understanding, because my vote is not contingent upon any understanding, but I would certainly hope and would ask that the Finance Committee look at additional expense controls to offset that side of the equation. Thank you.
Thanks, Alderman Healy. Alderman Rose.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd like to make a few comments about this. I think Alderman Bram briefly said, embedded in his comments was this notion that I don't know if gas station owners are going to pass this on penny for penny to their customers. We don't really know that. I think that the gas station owners in Elmhurst, they have a tough job. They've got a very tough job. It's a local community. They sell to folks in town. I am incredibly impressed with their business skills. I don't always buy my gas in town, but trust me, I do a lot of the time, partially because it's convenient. I, like the rest of the world, look, gee, should I pay $2.89 or should I pay $2.88 for it? To be honest with you, just as much my decision depends on which side of the road that gas station is on. So I think anyone who really thinks they can predict customer behavior is not quite as smart as they might think they are. The consumer is a tricky person. So I think that the skills of the business people in this community who own gas stations, they are challenged all the time. It's not easy to have a gas station anytime, and it's certainly not in a community like this. One, we don't know if they're going to pass this price on or not. We know that, what we do know, and I thank Alderman Bram for this, is already the price of gas is differential all through town. So that if people are doing it, buying their gas just by price, we should see those who have the lowest price, people are flocking to that gas station. That's not necessarily true. My understanding about all gas stations is that they don't make their money off of gas at all. What they make their money off of is cigarettes, Coke, the odd person like me who at midnight's got to run out and get some milk. That's where they make their money, is that, and we've seen that over and over and over. So I have a lot of faith in these gas station owners that they will continue to be profitable. They'll figure out how to price their gas. They'll figure out how to price their Coke and their cigarettes and their milk and their gum and their People magazine to continue to make a profit. That's what they will do. The last thing about the tax I want to say is this. I have been on this city council, as many people like to point out, much longer than most people want to talk about. And you know, usually when we raise taxes, there's, especially in businesses, most of the time there's people out in that audience who are, they're business owners themselves, are there. And they are not silent. They are not reticent. They will tell me, they will tell you, they'll tell all of us, don't raise taxes. They're always there talking. And I look out tonight and I got to tell you, perhaps I don't recognize them. I don't see one gas station owner out there telling me, do not raise the price of gas. So I got to say to myself, how can I help you when you won't help yourself? It's not that just because they're silent, I'm not saying, oh, gee, come on out and say it, but that says something to me. They are not here arguing and saying, do not impose this tax on us. I think that supports my notion that these are good businessmen and they'll figure a way out with that. So I do intend to support this, but I'd like to make one more comment, and that is about the process that we've gone through here. In my almost 20 years as an alderman, I've worked with City Manager Borchert, and I have found him to be so decent, so honorable, so fair, so incredibly competent. I think we are very lucky to have this man with us. As a result of that, however, I think it is very unfair for us to rely on the city manager to debate an issue. I think that is unfair. Perhaps we've grown lazy because of his competence, that we ask him to do that. I would challenge all of us, and I would remind all of us, it is the job of the chairman of a committee, and I'm not getting down on Alderman Hipskin, who I think does a great job, but it is the chairman's job to debate an issue. It's the vice chairman's job to debate an issue. It's all of our jobs to debate that issue. It is unfair to rely on the services of this incredibly competent, fair, professional man to do that. So I would challenge all of us to step up to the dais more frequently. We need to make those arguments. It is not fair to ask City Manager Borchert to make those arguments, and I, for one, will dedicate my own self to making those arguments. I think every single one of us needs to do that, and that's the end of my comments.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Hipskin.
A quick comment to Alderman Rose. I think it's my fault. I apologize. I did ask Mr. Borchert to really concisely wrap up a lot of this. So, no.
Say that to make sure, so you know I don't think it is your fault.
Oh, no, I know. You know what? It really, I don't think either of us are too taken back, but it is a good point and a point well made. Thank you.
Anyone else? Alderman Pezza.
Thank you, Mayor. I spend a lot of time in my car. My business keeps me in my car. My personal life puts me in my car. And sometimes I feel like I live in my car, which forces me to buy a lot of gasoline. And when I'm driving, I also like to listen to the radio. And just this weekend, as I was listening to the radio, it reminded me how often several radio stations announce where is the best and cheapest place to buy your gasoline. And I know people listen to this, and I know people probably, I don't know, but I'm assuming because I'm one to say, whoa, I'm near there, I'm going to go get my gas there. And, you know, if we vote on this increase, I can be certain that we're not going to be hearing on the radio anytime soon, go to Elmhurst, which is a real shame. Because here we are, sending a message daily, shop Elmhurst, buy Elmhurst, shop in Elmhurst, stay in Elmhurst, make your purchases in Elmhurst, buy Elmhurst, shop Elmhurst. We all say it, I try and do it myself. Unfortunately, what is the message we're actually sending when we're saying shop Elmhurst, buy Elmhurst, yet this vote could deliberately drive people out of or away from buying anything in this town? I think we're starting to sound like politicians. Do one thing, but we're doing another. I don't understand how those two fit together. To me, it's not the same message. I think by increasing the prices, this is just basically a crapshoot. None of us knows for sure. We don't have proof. We don't know who's still going to purchase their gas in Elmhurst or what anybody's going to do. It's a gamble. When people choose to deliberately drive away from or out of this community, I think they're also more likely to patronize another business that is closer to that gas station they're going to stop into. If you're going somewhere else for your gas and you need something from a local drugstore or a grocer and it's right there also, once again, well stated, it's about convenience. It's about price. Today's day and age, convenience and price are what rules. I want to encourage not only Elmhurst residents, but passersby and anyone else in neighboring communities to come to this town deliberately, to come to Elmhurst, to stop at our gas station, and while you're here, check out one of our great restaurants. Stop in a little store and buy something. Go to our grocery stores. Go to our drugstores. Shop and buy Elmhurst. Stay in Elmhurst. Please don't go away. This is just one gamble I'm not willing to take. I've heard this saying, penny wise and pound foolish. Could apply. We don't know. We just passed the Lucky Motors incentive, which was very exciting and a large promise of lots of new revenue to the community. I know in one meeting a couple of weeks ago, thank you to city staff and the Public Works Committee, in one meeting alone, I added it up on 4 contracts that we voted on. We saved $88,000 under budget. Good for us, good for city staff. Those are the types of things that we should be doing. Those are the types of things the taxpayers expect us to do. We also are saving $200,000 a year in one contract with the ambulance company. We are looking at also other incentives for which I've been hearing, other businesses coming. These are all positive things. These are all new ways to get revenue without reaching into the taxpayer or anyone else's pockets to potentially drive them away. And as long as we want to refer to the citizen survey, I read over it before I came here this evening to refresh my memory. And the thing that really changed my mind and made my mind clear about what I was going to do this evening is 2 things. One question was what the residents thought the 3 biggest problems were they would be faced with in the next 5 years. The number 1 and number 2 response overwhelmingly was the cost of living and affordability of Elmhurst and the taxes. The second question was, what do you like least about living in Elmhurst? The number 1 response overwhelmingly was taxes. This is another tax. This will drive people out of our community potentially. I want people to come to Elmhurst. I want people to stay in Elmhurst. I want people to shop Elmhurst. I want people to buy Elmhurst. I don't want to deliberately drive people out of our town. So I cannot support this.
Thank you, Alderman. All right, anybody else? Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I alluded to this question, but I would like to make this request of directly to the someone on the Finance Committee, since we are all not privy to everything that is discussed in the committee. The proposal today is for 1.5 cent increase. As I've discussed in my previous comments, and I'll be more specific this time, what was proposed in the budget for the end of the last fiscal year was for the MFT, for the motor fuel tax, was $1,108,050. We were roughly 23,000 under that at the end of the fiscal year. This proposal, if passing and if generating the 250,000 that it is stated to generate, would be way above and beyond that, over 10 times what we had a shortfall last time around in the last fiscal year. This is the most recent data that has been provided to the council, so I can only go on what was estimated, what was proposed and estimated for the last fiscal year. So if I may ask the Finance Committee if they have any additional background information on why is the proposal 1.5 cents compared to a quarter, a half cent, 1 cent, et cetera, et cetera? Why not a lower amount compared to what's being proposed tonight?
It originally was put in at 2 cents. It's about $21,500 a month at the current gas rates. The numbers that you were using, I really don't, I didn't quite follow them. I don't know where they came from.
Budget?
But where, I mean, there's a lot of numbers in the budget. So we decided, it was originally put in at 2 cents by the Finance Task Force. We decided on a penny and a half. A penny and a half gives us a half-cent advantage over Cook County. So we do have that half-cent advantage over Cook County, so that's kind of where we came with the penny and a half. And then as far as a delay goes, if you remember the price of gas, it has actually come down significantly in the last 6-7 months, which was another factor that really came into bringing this back up. Also, the revenue, not only the revenue projections for the future, but the actual revenue that came in. We need to change our revenue sources. Sales tax is down. We have a number of revenue sources. We have a number of expenses that are fixed. We have watched our number one revenue source, sales tax, go down significantly. We need to change that. This is a user tax. This is a tax that will be imposed on both people within Elmhurst and outside of the city. So this is one way that we're changing our revenue streams. We cannot just sit and wait for sales tax to come back. We have to address our revenue streams as we have. This is one of them that we can look at. We can project pretty accurately what it's going to be, and it's changing the revenue streams of Elmhurst. So,
may I follow up?
Sure.
Sure, Alderman. Just to clarify, because Alderman Hipskin, you did request where I was getting the numbers. The estimated was from the budget, but the revenue numbers that I was referring to was the major revenue report that we all receive on a monthly basis. The latest that we received, at least that I had in my packet, was June 4 of 2010, and it quotes numbers a couple months back due to the delay of reporting sales tax, et cetera. The sales tax, since we're a home rule community and we do now have an additional 0.5% for the general fund in sales tax. If I add the two numbers up from the municipal 1% and the sales tax being 0.5%, just for the month of April relative from 2009 and 2010, we have a comparison of 796,000 to 645 in 2009. So we're actually above. If we just solely look at April, and I know that's not the right way to look at it, but April of 2010 seems to be above, is above what April in 2009 was. The end of year for both, for sales tax, in 2009, end of fiscal year, end of April, was $9,420,000. And if I add up the two numbers, because that additional revenue stream, it's approximately $9,800,000. So we're actually above just in regards to the two comparisons. Now, I'm not doing an evaluation compared to what's in the budget, but going from year to year, our sales tax from year to year has slightly increased from a fiscal to fiscal end of year, as well as on the FT.
Okay, well, I really can't comment on the information that you just brought forth. I mean, you're talking about different data from different sources on a monthly basis, and if we compare this to this, I would have loved you know, a question on that, but I mean, there's so many different numbers coming from so many different places. I mean, show it to me, and then maybe I can comment on a point, but you know, I just ad hoc cannot comment on the, you know, I mean, this month versus last month. I mean, you have 20 numbers that you just mentioned. I don't keep them all in my head.
No, I apologize. I wasn't asking for you to comment. I was just providing some examples. So I didn't mean to put you on the spot to comment. So.
Well, okay, and you know, and the reality is, if you want to put it in an email or something, I mean, I'm sure we can look at that, and that's good information to have. I just can't comment on that right now.
Okay. City Manager Borton, I go to Alderman Gutenkopf. Go ahead, City Manager Borton.
Yeah, I would need to look at the monthly numbers to fully respond to Alderman Bram's question about the sales taxes. But relative to the municipal motor fuel tax, I think it's important that we keep separate the current motor fuel tax, which folks pay, in which the city of Elmhurst gets a percentage of based on the population of the city of Elmhurst. That tax is a motor fuel tax taxed by the state of Illinois, and the city of Elmhurst gets part of that back for authorized areas of expenditures, maintaining streets, and needs to follow the state process to spend those dollars. That's the motor fuel tax that is in currently the reports that you see from the city's finance department. The state motor fuel tax, which just goes towards maintaining streets, sidewalks, storm sewers, and the trees that are in the city's parkway. The proposal of a municipal motor fuel tax would provide a local tax on fuels that would fund the general fund. So should this be approved, there'll be a new revenue source to the general fund.
And
Alderman Brown, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry about that. So there's no restrictions, if this so passes, there's no restrictions on these additional funds compared to the
motor
fuel tax?
The state motor fuel.
Thank you.
Correct.
Thanks for the clarification.
Alderman Leader.
Thank you. I've heard many numbers and assumptions tonight, but the one number that struck me the hardest was that our normal working cash fund normally is somewhere between 800,000 to $1 million. That's our normal working cash fund. The current working cash fund balance is $30,465 and maybe a few cents. And it's for that reason, and that reason alone, that I'm going to support this proposal. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Alderman. Any other discussion before Alderman Ibo?
Yeah, I just want to clear up, I think clear up some confusion created by Alderman Bram's comments. I think I understood him to be saying that when he looked at the numbers in April, that it looked like we had actually increased our sales tax collection over the last fiscal year. So then he would have been looking at the end of fiscal year 09, comparing those numbers to fiscal year 08, which would be no surprise because in mid-fiscal year 08, that's when this council increased the home rule sales tax. So, you know, there's a larger base of support from which fiscal 09. What we're looking at now, though, is when we're projecting out for fiscal 10, or fiscal 10, our current fiscal year, that we're seeing a trend of an 8% decline, so in the first 3 months. So, you know, our fiscal year ends on April 30th. So when we look back at a snapshot at April 30th of 2010, it's not a surprise that the sales tax figure is looking stronger than the prior fiscal year.
Agreed. Very good, thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'd ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll, please.
Hipskin.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Gudenkauf.
No.
Pezza.
No.
Shea.
No.
Leader.
Aye.
Rose.
Aye.
Bram.
No.
Nybo.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Worley, absent. Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner, absent. It looks like 8 ayes, 4 nays, and 2 absent. Is that right? That's 16, 14. Wait a minute, that's wrong.
Let's double check that count, Clerk, please.
Wait a minute, 1, 2. Yeah, didn't seem right,
All
but
right.
8 ayes, 4 nays, 2 absent.
8 ayes, 4 nays, 2 absent. The report carries. And I would just like to interject. I thought the debate was very good. I think that the fact that the motor fuel, considering the majority of the revenues received will be from non-residents, that's a big issue. I think that's huge. How often do we have a chance to be able to take in revenue and diversify our revenue streams and actually do that with non-residents? We're looking at roughly about a 50% or higher purchase from non-residents. Cigarettes, the savings from Cook County to DuPage is around $20 a carton. So I think the majority of the Cook County business should still come our way. And I see Kevin Diamond out in the audience, and they worked their tails off, and they recommended a 2-cent increase in this motor fuel as a diversification of our revenue, considering where sales tax has been. And I know he's beaming back there because he knows we need the revenue, and considering the storms we've had as of recent, that's huge as well. The citizen survey was huge, and I think that was overwhelmingly indicative of a user tax, almost 4 or 5 to 1 over property tax. Diversify revenues. We're watching spending. Alderman Pezza talked about how we're watching our spending, and Alderman Healy watching those dollars and watching revenues at the same time, and making sure that we live within our means, and encouraging economic development, which I think need to do. We are doing, and we're passing businesses into town. We're sometimes having to spend a buck to make a buck, and I think we're going to continue to do that, and hopefully we'll keep on going in that fashion. So I applaud the council for getting this diversified revenue stream in place, and I look forward to many more months of working together. So on to item number 8, reports and recommendations of appointed and elected officials. Item A. My reports are going to be pretty short. I did a lot of coverage on updates as to what was happening. I would just like to mention that Elmhurst kind of made history yesterday. We had our little vintage baseball game at Barron's Park, and actually it was an event that was sponsored by the Elmhurst Historical Museum. I see Kevin, the Irish Diamond, in the audience, who did a great job, and many of the aldermen. Alderman Kennedy was out there and did a great job as well too. And we had a few guys go down with some pulled hammies, but overall I think it was a valiant effort on the behalf of Elmhurst. We did come up a couple runs short, but it was a great day. I think a great day for Elmhurst. Probably the biggest turnout I've ever seen at the event, and just a credit to the culture in this town, credit to the arts, credit to the history, and I give kudos to all of the folks in the Historical Museum. That Alderman York also was out in attendance, was playing first base and caught a couple of my throws. So we had a lot of fun yesterday. It was a little hot day, but I think we all enjoyed ourselves. So I think a credit to our community, and you can watch it on Comcast and make fun of the mayor for overrunning third base. And that's it for me. Any updates from appointed or elected officials? Alderman, City Clerk Spencer?
Yes, the clerk's office was asked to review the roll call voting procedure, specifically the order in which each alderman is called upon for their vote. And after looking at other municipalities, I have adopted a new procedure which will go into effect at the August 2nd council meeting. Votes will now go in the following order: the alderman who made the motion, followed by the alderman who seconded the motion, and then the remaining aldermen in descending order after the alderman who seconded the motion. And I have some examples on the dais for you. It's a little confusing unless you look at it, but it will provide a total mix in the vote. I've presented this to the Finance, Council Affairs, and Administrative Services Committee and received their approval. So I will be reporting back to the committee in 6 months on how it's working.
Thank you, Clerk Spencer.
Does anyone have
Any questions for Clerk Spencer on the procedures as far as motion? Currently, it's motion second, and when the roll call is taken, the person in motions get called in first, second gets called in second, and then it goes in typically in the order of the ward, first ward, second ward, you know. Now we will be doing it a little bit differently, but the order will be staggering a little bit, which might make it a little bit more, I guess, fresh, new. Basically, the votes will be the votes, but something a little bit different. So.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
That concludes my report.
Not a question.
Okay. Thank you, Clerk Spencer. Alderman Mulliner with...
Yeah, I just would like to, since the debate is over about the motor fuel tax, make one comment, and that is that I'd like to echo what Alderman Rose said. I think she said it very well, and that is the fact that we need to be very careful as elected officials to make sure that we're debating the issues and not the city manager. The city manager is very competent. We all support what he's able to do. He's a tremendous asset to this community, but it's not his responsibility to debate these issues, and I think we need to make sure that we do not let us fall into that trap. And I feel like we're starting to fall into a trap of having staff debate issues rather than the council debate those issues, and I'd like to make sure that we're very careful, and I appreciate Alderman Rose stating that fact. That's our responsibility to debate the issues.
Thank you, Alderman. Very good. And any other business? And to item number 9, other business. Alderman Pezza.
Thank you. Just a quick question. When I was looking at my packet on item E, the upping of the EDC, it will go from 9 to 12. And then I recalled maybe this question is for Mr. Borchert. We recently voted to reappoint 4 commissioners, and then we also just newly appointed 1 commissioner. So the numbers weren't quite adding up, and I guess my question would be then to give an update, because we really haven't heard. Is Mr. Hiffman's yes or no still on this commission? When I'm adding the numbers, it would give me 13.
City Manager Borchert, I believe
I know that Dan Hiffman has not been reappointed. Nobody's been appointed to replace him. We are seeking nominations. The mayor's office is seeking nominations. From that perspective, I think there's 3 new spots, and there's 1 spot that has not been reappointed.
So is he or is he not still officially on?
Commissioner Hiffman is a commissioner on the commission and will serve until he's replaced.
He is still on?
Yes, he is.
Okay, because he is not listed as a commissioner as of today on our website. There are 9 people full served, and he is not one of them. And then when I was trying to add this all up, it didn't add up to 12.
Gotcha. We'll get it added on the website.
So we have 10?
I will double check. We'll double check on that.
Check with Mike.
Chief Assistant City Manager Kopp, do you have a number on that?
Bill Huber replaced Scott Lamore, who no longer works for Almost College, who's Almost College representative. So there are 9.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Thanks for clarifying. Any other business? Announcements? Alderman Rose, and I'll go to Alderman Mulliner.
I want to call our attention, I suppose this is really a lot for the folks at home, but to call our attention to Cool Cities Green Fest that's going to be on July 31st. Not the least, I actually am going to be on a panel, but that's not why I'm doing this, but this is really a wonderful event, community event, and what draws a lot of attention, of course, is the boutique recycling. It's a great way. One of the things people have a lot of issues with is how am I going to get rid of my old monitor? How am I going to get rid of my old, fill in the blanks? And That's one of the big highlights of this program, is being able to, people can come and drop off some of that for recycling. But I think there's just a lot of different exciting things that are going to be out there. It's a fun day for folks in the community in Wilder Park. A lot of different ideas people don't know about. I urge everybody to attend this, because I think it really is important that all of us be involved in who are interested in sustainability efforts. So this is on Saturday, July 31st, from 10 a.m. in the morning to 3 p.m. in Wilder Park. I urge everyone to attend that. It'll be a fun day, too.
Thanks, Alderman. Alderman Mulliner.
Yeah, as everybody's aware, there was a lot of flooding in different areas in the city. There was some flooding down in the 7th Ward, and this Thursday at between 4 o'clock and 7 o'clock, we're going to have an open house at the lift station at Jackson and Sailor to talk with city staff about the flooding, so that people have an opportunity to come out and have a discussion and identify, maybe give some thoughts as to some ideas that they may have, listen to the thoughts that the staff has. So the open house is from 4 o'clock to 7 o'clock. We're trying to pass the word out the best we can, so we want to make sure everybody, if you see this, come to it. Please attend. Once again, the 22nd from 4 o'clock to 7. Thanks.
Very good, very good. And I will be there myself. Alderman Wagner, planning on attending as well, too. So appreciate the aldermen, especially affected in these areas, to be there to listen to the constituents. And also, we have staff analyzing the problems and trying to come up with solutions to these problems as well, too. So any other announcements? One thing I want to plug again, the ECAF golf outing, which is Monday, August 2nd. I got the nod out there from Mr. Diamond, treasurer of ECAF, who spent over $100,000 last year in local funding for our kids here in Elmhurst. It's probably the biggest fundraiser that they have, right there with the kiddie art. So it's important that we get a good showing. We've got a great honoree. It's our former mayor, Tom Marcucci. Great guy who's done a lot of great things for our town. He was the chairman of ECAF back before I was mayor, and so I really would encourage people to come out and support golf. If you can't make golf, come out for dinner. It's at Oak Brook Municipal, and it's a great day. So great day for a great cause, and we've got more and more people with disabilities, with sickness. We've got Joe Girardi's out there that were once young kids here that are successful and have graduated college and have gone on to prove the odds of the challenges that they've faced. And we got to see Joe here tonight with his dad out in the audience, Mr. Girardi. So the kids keep on coming, and we keep on raising money and making sure we're here to help. So one last thing I wanted to mention on the City Manager Borchert conversation. Chairman Hipskin asked if I would allow City Manager Borchert to speak upon this memo. And this, I don't believe, was a debated item by the city manager. He would discuss the options and the dollars and the cents, and so that's why we went ahead and let him do that. So, but that was encouraged by the chairman, and I appreciate that encouragement. So, with that, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn. Alderman Rose, Alderman Mulliner, all in favor? Aye. We're adjourned.